So have you been kind of following? Like, I feel like this draft for Green Bay especially is like every year. So like this is, like I said, it's my favorite thing. I do mock drafts. I love mock drafts. Yeah. I just love the draft. I don't know why, but I do. I mean, I remember watching it in 2 days and bringing up my Packer report and seeing their mock drafts and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I still remember when they mocked Rex Grossman to Green Bay to replace Favre.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that worked out. But, you know, like this one, I feel like this year is like coming off the season they had. I don't have a very good gauge of where they're going to go at this point. I keep going back to offensive line, not just saying it in front of you guys, but.
And I agree. I mean, you lose Bakhtiari. You got to have somebody covering Love. He's a young quarterback. You better give him some protection. You don't want him running for his life. I mean, he's not comfortable yet in the pocket. He shows potential. You know, he really does. I mean, he had a great season last year for his first time, but you got to have people to protect him, and otherwise you get scared back there, and it's a lonely place. And if he's running for his life every time, like your foundation, I'm sorry, is offensive line. And your offense, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I 100% agree with Joe. I mean, the biggest thing we were told going all the way back to college is the outcome of the game, it starts and ends up front with the O-line and D-line. The D-line is going to set the tone for the defense with how much pressure they put on the quarterback or the run game, and the offensive line is going to set the tone for the offense, both in the run game and pass game. Yeah, I got to say, I look back to 2001, my rookie year. Granted, I was a backup in 01, but our O-line had our top five guys had so much experience, and then we had three guys as backups for those top five. And other than myself, who was a rookie, we had Frank Winters as a backup, who had like 12 years in the NFL, and we had Barry Stokes as a backup, who had like 9 years in the NFL. Those were the backups. Where when I look at a young O-line, especially in injuries, you never know. Right. You might get 2 injuries on the O-line in game 1. You might go the whole season without an injury. That's an unknown. But having those backups to be able to step in where nothing changes is greatly important. Right. Especially if you want to make a run deep in the playoffs, if not to the Super Bowl. You got to have backups. And you need that at all positions. But I go back to it starts and ends up front on both sides of the ball.
You know, there's a guy out of Duke, Graham Burton, who I really like. He's a guy that plays multiple spots under it. I think last time we talked to was the multiple positions on an offensive line, the versatility on there. Then the other part of me is like, how much does a team like Green Bay kind of go back on their pedigree of like, well, we've been able to find linemen later in a draft. You know, do they, address somewhere else in the first round because they've got this mindset, hey, look at the linemen we found on like day 2 or day 3. You know, Bakhtiari was a 4th rounder. Josh Sitton, all those other guys over there too. Bill Ferrario, exactly.
Just say
who was that last one?
Josh Sitton.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I thought you said something after him. I didn't hear that name.
But I don't know if that's a thing. Like, do they kind of use that as like, oh, we know we can find somebody out there, so they bypass? I think that's a dangerous mindset, though, to have.
I don't like it, honestly, though. But then you look back at the Tony Manders draft. Like, come on, it could have Barry Sanders, and we took Tony Manders, and he kind of laid an egg on us. So, but like I said, that's risky. I err on the side of caution. Pay the guy some money and bring somebody in there that is going to be at least a pillar in your projection. Again, can't count injuries, can't count a lot of outside variables. But you've seen him play. You know how he's wired. By now, you've done enough homework on the guy. You know his character. You know his work ethic. You know all the stuff because the background that the NFL does on their players is so extensive when it comes to everything. I know that me and Bill talked about that he was standing in there in his underwear, and they're measuring like his fingertip length, his arm length, and everything is so well documented when it comes to that. You kind of have an idea as to what it is.
Right.
I love how everything I've told Joe, he remembers I was standing there in my underwear. I love that part of it. Here's what I'll say. I think everybody's a Monday morning quarterback. I do think one of the most difficult jobs in the NFL is to be a GM, especially in this situation. I side with Joe when you have something that's guaranteed. When you have an offensive lineman that you've seen him play 3, if not 4 years, you know what he does, you know he's going to fit well in the program. It's tough to say, we're going to pass on him right now. We're going to take the best athlete available. Right. That always bothered me. It's like, what is the biggest spot you need to fill? Fill that with the first-round draft pick. If you want to do the best athlete in the 2nd, 3rd round, I'm okay with that. But with that first-round pick, I don't know. I'm not a fan. Maybe we're old school, but I'm not a fan of that best athlete. I'm a fan of what's the biggest need we have, fill the need.
That's where I always chuckle when you hear GM say, well, we don't draft for need. And I'm like, well, you kind of do.
Yeah,
you know, because I mean, okay, Green Bay's at 25 and all of a sudden, you know, one of the top quarterbacks there.
Right.
So if you don't draft for need, are you drafting that quarterback?
Yeah.
You know, it's stuff like that. It's like, I get kind of what you're saying, but at the same time, we're not stupid. We realize you're drafting mostly for need at that point. And that's like if there's an offensive lineman there, and that's like you got to trust your board, I think, at that point. You know, you hear these GMs talk about trusting the board, trusting the process there. And I think the big question when it comes to Green Bay is like, they had Walker play last year, the Northwestern kid. You guys have anything against Northwestern?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were always nice to me. They were nice people.
They got him at left tackle, and he played well. But then the question is, are they ready to hand over left tackle, which is pretty important, right? Pretty important. Are they ready to give him full-time duty? And if they're not, that changes everything. Or if they are, that changes a lot too at that point. That's where it's like I look at this, then they're like, okay, do they need another safety? You know, everybody says Cooper DeJean from Iowa, you know, and it's like I don't really have a good gauge where they're going to go this year. And that adds some intrigue, excitement to it too.
Oh, absolutely, when you don't know. You don't know what's coming. I think another thing too, and I think it's a different regime now than in the early to mid 2000s. But I remember going back to Green Bay as a guest with a couple other former Packers, and we spoke. I forget what type of group was there, but the Packer finance person spoke back then, and he bragged that they were still $8 million under the salary cap, and the whole audience started applauding. And one of the players, I'm trying to think who, I don't know if it was Antonio Freeman. It was somebody that I played with that was very outspoken. That's why Freeman comes to mind. I love him, but he's an outspoken guy.
Yeah.
Went up and grabbed the mic and goes, "Stop clapping. That's nothing to be proud of. We should spend every penny and win a Super Bowl." And that's my attitude too. And I know that's more free agency than the draft, but that's along the lines of what's the mentality of the GM?
Right.
Where I look back at like when we were kids, those Dallas Cowboy years when they were winning Super Bowls, they were maxing out the cap, if not going over the cap, every single year. But they have a trophy to prove it. It's like, and that's what this former player was trying to tell the audience is there's no award or plaque for being $8 million under. I'd rather have. I don't give a crap about that $8 million under. I want a Super Bowl trophy. Spend every single penny you can to get that trophy, and that's the same with the draft picks. It's like you got to when you're drafting, and I think that's what every fan hopes is you're drafting, trying to win a Super Bowl that year. So that's why I think I don't like that best athlete.
Right.
It's fill the needs, fill the spots, shore up the holes, and let's put a Super Bowl team together.
Especially if you're a team that's got Super Bowl aspirations now, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that clock moved up after last year,
Absolutely.
the way it ended. You know, one play away, a couple plays away maybe from going to the NFC Championship game.
Right.
And going up against a team that you just kicked their butt on Thanksgiving, so you're probably feeling pretty good about your chances to go there. You know, as offensive lineman, you know, Matt LaFleur says a lot when it comes, and I guarantee he's probably going to say it like 15 times when training camp opens. The 5 best play. He said that the last couple of years when it comes to offensive linemen. When you hear that, I mean, I think there's some grace to it. You know, I know what he's getting at, but I mean, there's got to be some flexibility with that too. Like, I mean, okay, you might have 2 really good left tackles, but maybe one of them can't play guard. So really, it's not the 5 best play, right? I mean, when you hear a coach say the 5 best play,
right?
There's still a little bit of interpretation in there, right?
And then let me ask you this. Are you including in that maybe one's a better athlete, but the other one knows the playbook? He's been around here longer. So now his overall knowledge of the game, whether it's reading defenses and calling out stuff, like it's not just there's so many little things that go into how do you label the 5 best. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. So, and I 100% once again, I think it's because we're best friends that I always agree with Joe. Because our minds are like identical here.
You're kind of like Troy Aikman on the broadcast with Joe Bucket.
Agree. But I do, and it makes sense. I mean, Joe and I know what it's like. As an O-line's one of those positions that 5 guys have to play the same. It's almost like a dance. You have to know what the guys next to you are doing, where their feet are, what they're looking at. Where most other positions, whether it's offense or defense, you're sort of on an island for the most part. Where O-lineman, it has to work. And to Joe's point, if somebody knows the playbook, but you just drafted an O-lineman with the 15th or 20th pick of the first round, that O-lineman that has the experience is probably the guy that is at least going to start out until the guy behind him beats him out.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, So I think knowledge and experience play a huge factor in who those top 5 are.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, you hear some coaches say that they don't care about your draft stock or anything like that. But, I mean, you went through it. A first rounder is probably going to come in with a little bit more leeway, would you say? Or at least a little bit more like, okay, you're going to get the shot compared to maybe a 6th rounder or 7th rounder. Like, I feel like if you're that late draft pick, the coaches can say, doesn't matter. It kind of does.
Yeah.
Because opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, those guys drafted higher are going to
get
more opportunities.
And I think that's where LaFleur is coming from. I think that statement, at least from our point of view as players, is every day we're judging. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, you got to produce every single day. Where if that first rounder comes out, say it's a first round left tackle, and we don't have a left tackle spot. If he comes out every day and he's dogging it in 1-on-1 pass rush, he's getting beat in 9-on-7, he's not going to be given that job. That's to me, that's what the best 5 are going to play. Right. You have to prove camp's 6 weeks long. It's 2 weeks and then 4 weeks of preseason. Maybe they reduced it by a week with preseason, but camp is long, and you got to produce every single practice every day. And I think that's what, at least my interpretation of what LaFleur is saying. You got to produce, and whoever produces the most, we're going to have those guys playing on the O-line.
What do you make of like now compared to like when you guys were younger and in college to where it's at now? You got people doing like me mock drafts that just live for this stuff, and you go online and people's got like 7 versions of their mock draft, and they'll probably end up with 22 different ones the day before because they're going to try to get 5 guys right in their mock draft. I mean, it's like what 20 some years now, how it's changed in the perception of this thing. Yeah. Like it's a huge event.
I think everything about it, even between the draft, fantasy football, which came out after we were done, at least done in college. I just think it's all blown up, and it's what the business of the NFL represents. I mean, this all helps the NFL as a brand. Yep. The mock drafts, the fantasy football, all that. But yeah, it's
12 months sport now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The coverage, the playing overseas, playing in other countries, trying to gain more fans. It's all about the business. And it's not bad, but yeah, it's a business.
Would you guys have liked to have played overseas?
No. I would like to experience it. I wouldn't want the plane flight. I wouldn't want once again, we don't like change. Most people don't like change. Offensive lineman, when you play on the road, you're in a different locker. The field's a little bit different. No, I'd say no.
No, probably not. I don't like airplanes either. I don't fit in them very well. So, and we had a couple of planes where we had to fly commercial and a couple of plane rides, and you have 3 guys my size sitting in a seat next to each other. I don't care if you showered before you get on the plane. By the time you walk out of there, it's hot box, and it's.
We had a couple close calls too. On planes. Yeah.
Yes, we did. But yeah, so probably not. Although it'd be kind of fun to go play over in Poland. I think they have some good food there. So.
Yeah, I know they were talking as Green Bay might open up in, I think, is it Brazil against the Eagles?
That just sounds hot.
Yeah.
It just sounds miserably hot.
And again, Mark Murphy's kind of doing these subtle things. He's like, we embrace that. He's like, but, travel-wise, we don't have the right airport to go there. So he's already setting it up. He's like, well, then we'd have to go to Milwaukee. And he's like, that's a competitive distance. I'm like, you could just say we don't want to play there. Right? We don't want to go
I think,
that game.
too, am I right or wrong, I think the challenge with Green Bay is if they're the team that's given up a home game.
Yeah.
I think that's what's big, where the fans don't want that.
Right.
They don't want to lose a home game just to allow the team to play overseas.
Well, even like road, or like if they're on the road, because you go to some of these stadiums and it's like, well, they don't want to give up their home game against the Packers because the fans travel.
Exactly.
So they're in that spot too where, when they added that 9th game every other year, that's when they played in England the first year.
Yeah.
So, season ticket holders still got their 8. They didn't lose it.
Exactly.
That sort of thing. So.
Cabin Coffee Altoona, located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane in Altoona, Wisconsin. Hey, folks, we serve breakfast and lunch all day long. It doesn't matter what time you come in. We can do breakfast, lunch, we use salads. Your sandwiches are made to order, not just open a cellophane container and put it in the microwave. So stop on by Cabin Coffee for the freshest food and coffee you can get.
Who do you got on your notes over there? You got some dudes?
Yeah, so we were looking.
You got your scouting cap on? Right
yeah,
now?
we got it. Joe and I were talking a little bit, and I said, listen, we got to do an O-lineman, and most of these papers have O-lineman. I don't know them that well, but I'm happy. Tyler Guyton, offensive lineman from Oklahoma. Graham Barton, offensive lineman from Duke.
Yep.
There's quite a few O-linemen, which I was happy about. But the reason I slid this paper up was I said to Joe, I go, listen, I'm not saying I want to draft a defensive guy, nor do I know anything about this guy, but Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Yeah.
I sort of want to hear him draft him not in the first round, but I want him to be a Packer, just to have a cool
Well, I mean, they at the combine, they made him taste test a bunch of Kool-Aid. You know, that's kind of, that's the kind of content they were doing on the NFL Network.
Who's the guy that we had? Clinton Dix. Clinton Dix. I go, it's just like one of those. You see the name, it's like hard to not like the guy.
Pac-Man Jones?
I don't know him at all. Exactly.
Yep.
Well, Pac-Man, we know a little bit about. Like he's had a little off the field issues, but yeah, just the name. So yeah, that's why I slid it up.
And that's he's a corner, and I'm curious to see. They got a new defensive coordinator who has a defensive backs background. You know, do they kind of focus on how involved is a new coach coming in? Like Goody, their GM, is going to incorporate him on, like, okay, what do you need? What are you looking for? What kind of player do you want? Because this is what I don't understand quite this. Why coaches still to this day, especially in the NFL level, try to put square pegs into a round hole when it comes to a player. You know, like I don't understand that. You know, like what I get it. I don't know if it's an ego thing. Like, okay, my system, I know works. You're going to do it this way. But if you can get the most out of a player when they do something different, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
I think control and ego are a big thing, obviously. I mean, I think anybody you know has some sort of an ego in some way, shape, or form. And then at that level, with that much power and in the position that you're in, then I think it's more of an ego trip. And then obviously you're concerned about you're the new guy who just got here, serving since yesterday, and I don't think you know what's going on. And maybe I have a bigger picture that you're not aware of, so that's probably why.
Right.
And I think, too, like similar to defense, in my opinion, I believe you could stop the run a lot easier in the NFL running a 4-3 as opposed to a 3-4, but everybody converted to a 3-4.
Yep.
And I think it's just we don't want to be the team that doesn't do what everybody else is doing. Now, maybe you might get beat on pass plays more. That's where I'm not a defensive coordinator, but I truly believe why not have four guys when you're getting beat by the run? Why not run a 3-4?
And that's what I'm excited about to see that change this year too. You know, I mean, as an offensive lineman, you probably love it, but as a few years ago when they played the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, and 49ers literally passed like 11 times.
Yeah.
And kicked there, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm like, as an offensive lineman, you got to be like loving that game.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like, oh, let's do this every single play.
I love it when I don't care who's playing. I love it when you get to watch offensive linemen just go about their day and just morally dispose of people and watch you break the defensive lineman's will, and they can't stop it. And you had the game against where Coach Hughes was halfway out on the field.
Yeah, yelling. But that was our bread and butter. That's the way we got taught how to play football. Is they broke us down to build us into something that's basically a 5-man machine that's going to break the defense down. And like so what Joe brought up, we're playing Ohio State, I think in '98 at the Shoe, and Casey Rubach, who is now the recruiting coordinator at Wisconsin, it's like the third quarter of the game. We were down, I think, 17-0 or 19-0 in the first half. We ended up winning 42-19 or whatever. Casey suggests to Coach Huber on the sidelines, hey, I think the backside zone's open. And we're just like, why are you suggesting plays right now? And our offensive line coach, Jim Huber, walks out. The play, we're on ABC playing Ohio State in the Shoe. Huber walks out to the hash mark. So the ball is down on our right side, basically. The O-line bench is on the left side of the field. He walks out to the hash mark and starts yelling the name of the defensive line coach. The guy looks over and he's like, we're going to run the power until you stop us. Walks back, looks at the five of us, and he's like, we're running the power.
It was probably not as clean as Bill said it.
Exactly. He might have had a couple other choice words in there, but we're trying to be clean here. But yeah, it was literally, Joe and I have had a lot of headaches after games. that was a game. That was probably one of the worst headaches because it was just power right, power left, power right, power left, power like, and that's why Casey. Like, I think Casey was being honest, also a little bit of humor. Like, hey, maybe we change it up a little, because he's just back blocking. Where like us as guards, we're pulling nonstop, and the linebackers are like, the power's coming here. We're like, oh great, they even know, they know based off of our formation where it's going.
Hey, it's going to be on 2.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
I'm pulling to the left.
But that's where at the end of the game, you watch a tape like that, and you're like, well, now granted, the first half we played like dog crap, but that second half, watching us just move that line time after time when they knew what was coming. I mean, it's
just wearing them down throughout the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Exactly.
Going back to Braelon Allen too, kind of, full circle here, because I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier. I think he's one of the most intriguing players in this draft because he just turned 20. He plays running back.
It's crazy.
He's got 3 years of service under his belt already. He's you can all see the pictures of him at 17. He was already built, like a Greek god. And with how the NFL views running backs and, just kind of that to me he's so intriguing because he just turned 20, but he's got that 3 years. We know he's from Wisconsin where they like to run the ball. So I'm really curious to see where teams have him ranked, because you're not going to get a running back that comes in the league who just turned 20 and, you already played 3 years of college ball.
Yeah. And I think the age is going to help him a ton, because I think from Joe and I's time to today, the running backs have lowered in value. Where like he probably would have been a top 3 or top 5 pick 25 years ago. But I think running backs are they're devalued more because they know they're beat up coming in. They're going to get beat up. But I think that age is going to help them. Yeah. Just looking at it like he's 2 years younger, if not 3 years younger, than most of the other running backs that they're looking at. So,
exactly.
Let alone he's built like a freaking Greek god.
And the other part in this too is like, do you almost use a first round pick, because the other part in this is like those first round picks get that extra year of control.
Correct.
So in first round you get a 5th year option where it's like, okay, I got a 20-year-old running back, I can ground and pound that guy for 5 years, and when he's a free agent, he's still only 25.
You still value him.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that. I'm excited to see where he goes and how high he goes, because he's something different from that position than we've seen the last few years.
Yeah, no, 100% agree.
So
I agree.
You got it. I see. There's that. Oh, I saw a Minnesota guy in there. Don't tell.
No. Exactly. We're not talking about him.
No. He is a safety man.
He brought it up, and I'm
just remember the name Tyler Nubin. Nubin.
I'm gonna forget before we leave the friggin' room. I'm gonna forget.
He's gonna be humming it on the way home. Nubin.
It's like Newman.
It's like Newman. No, it's
Noonan.
Another Caddyshack.
There you go. That's old school.
See, you are a golfer. We've seen you swing, and now you can quote Caddyshack. Yeah,
you should see me walk a week after that, because we walked into the thing, and Bill looks at me. He's like, "Are you going to swing?" I said, "No, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to swing." I said, it's not feasible with my back."
Joe asked me, he's like, "Are you going to swing?" I'm like, we didn't know we were golfing 18. We just thought we're just having fun swinging. I go, I might swing like 4 times, see how it works. We walked out of there, 2 hours later, we're like, we probably swung 100 times with all those balls.
All of that. And I paid for it for about a week afterwards. Yes. It was miserable, and I just had to suffer through it because there's nothing you can do about it. On those days when you overdo it, and of course, that competitiveness is still in me. So when I shank one, I'm just like, and I don't golf. That's the thing. Like, it's not my sport. I don't even enjoy it, but I need to do good at things, or I lose it.
I don't know if I want to go fishing with you.
Well, look how they say with boxers. What do they say? Like the punch or the power is the last thing to go with boxing. I think with us, it's that attitude that you're not going to tell us no. Yeah. Like when I talk with high school kids, I remember I was inside indoor. We were doing Everest with Chris Oswald. We were talking to a bunch of kids, and we're in this indoor facility. And I go, you got to understand, like, so at this time, my hip was really bad. I couldn't even get in a stance, in a left-handed stance, to show the kids how to get in the stance. But I looked them all in the eye, and I'm like, but listen, if you tell me I can't climb to the roof of this building, I'm going to die trying. Yep. Like, that's our attitude. Is like, don't tell us no, because then we're going to do it. Like, And I think that's the last thing to go. Now, granted, it's not always wise.
No, I'm not saying
have to educate ourselves and be like,
smart at all.
This is stupid.
And while I was doing it, I knew I was going to pay for it. Yeah. I knew it, but at the end of the day, I'm like, well,
you were just hitting good balls, though, too.
Yeah, I mean, not really.
Dude, you were hitting them straight.
Exactly. Until the freaking semi-pro guy showed up. I think you were the best golfer there.
That guy was impressive. I don't know.
The last
guy who showed up late, you may have left, but he came in and he swung.
Once he swung one, Joe and I are like, yeah, you can take ours.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, well, what are we doing? Are we almost done? We're like, no. If you want more, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need more practice.
Yeah.
Just every swing he was swinging, it was like smooth as could be. Just calm, smooth. Boom, straight down the fairway. We're like, go ahead, enjoy yourself. Yeah. We're comfortable on the couch. We got pizza out here.
And his club speed was, and I don't know anything about golf, but you could hear him swing. And I was like, holy, I mean, he looked like, and he said he's been playing golf since he was in high school. And he plays like 4 or 5 times a week. And I'm going, that freaking shows, man. Like, good for you. That's impressive. Because I
also a lot of coin.
I don't have that. I don't have that.
Yeah, no. I don't know if you had anything else, but one thing I want to ask you too, kind of going back to the drafts, because you're a unique, obviously very few that got that call to the draft, and we hear players talk about that. Can you kind of give us a little bit like what that feeling was like when you got you kind of talked about the frustration, leading up to it.
Yeah.
But after you got that call and all that, I mean,
it was pretty awesome. I mean, I remember. So here's funny what happened. So we're in Scranton, Pennsylvania, northeastern Pennsylvania. Literally, while I'm still on the phone, like I sort of covered the phone. I was like going to Green Bay. Then all of a sudden, like 20 seconds later, you see it on the ticker that I went to Green Bay. Everybody that was at my house, all my mom, my dad, my sister, my aunts and uncles, cousins, boom, everybody left the house. I'm still on the phone, and everybody disappeared. They went all throughout Scranton trying to buy as much Green Bay gear as they could. They went to every department store that was open that day, and they literally bought all of Scranton out, like every hat, every T-shirt, every sweatshirt. They bought it all. And I just remember when I got off the phone, it was like I remember looking in the mirror and like smiling at myself. And it was one of those like you feel like for a second you got to the top of the mountain, but at the same time too, there's a really big mountain ahead of you.
Yeah.
So it's like you accomplished this goal that you had, your whole life, but now it's like the real stuff starts. And I remember talking to my agent, it was like, you're on such a high, and my agent's like, hey, just so you know, it was Sunday. We're having a conversation. He goes, just so you know, on Thursday, you have to be in Green Bay. So I was like, all right, I got to fly back to Wisconsin. I think I flew back Monday or Tuesday, and I drove up. They actually took, as a free agent or punter, Kevin Stemke. So Kevin and I drove up together, and one of the funny stories in that strip on Lombardi Ave that they bought up for the draft, there used to be, I think it was a Hardee's.
Yes, there was.
Yeah, there was a Hardee's there. So he's like, hey, you want something to eat? And we're like, yeah, let's go to Hardee's. We're in Hardee's, and I'm sitting with my back to a window, and I'm eating, and I'm about halfway through the burger, and I had never been to Lambeau before. And Kevin's from Green Bay. I go, hey, how close are we are we in Green Bay right now? Like, how close are we to Lambeau? And he just like points over my shoulder. I'm like, oh, that big green, that's Lambeau right there. We're like a block away, and you could see it. It was that big green bowl. So yeah, it was just, like I said, it's hard to explain. It's like every little kid's dream coming true. But yeah, there was a lot of work afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, in that moment, it's like you feel high as on top of the world.
Right. When did it kind of hit you? Like you were going to go over there?
I think it was when what hit me
that you were in the NFL and all that.
Oh, I think showing up in the locker room. The other funny story was so that first mini camp, it was just a rookie camp in May, and Kevin and I, we ended up rooming together. We were at the Hilton Garden Inn, so where they put all the rookies, and I wake up. It's like 4 a.m. And Kevin's eyes are wide awake, staring at me in bed. And I was like, can't sleep? He goes, no. I go, you want to head over? He goes, you think it's open? I go, I don't know. You want to just go there and sit in the car? We go to Lambeau at 4 a.m. And folks, don't try this. I'm sure they changed the locks and all this and that, but the door was open. We open the door, we walk in, literally turn the lights on in the locker room, turn the lights on in the training room, and just started walking around, like checking out the weight room, this and that. We're like, we got 3 hours to kill. Like no one's showing up for 3 hours. And this is where talking about, I wish we had technology back then. We had the old, like Joe and I call it, the cardboard phone. We're in the phones that were made out of the paper that you had to wind.
Yep.
We took turns sitting in Favre's locker, taking pictures of ourselves. Then we both put on Favre's practice jersey. So like even to this day, Kevin's like, I wonder if Favre was like, oh, this jersey's a little bit bigger today. that Ferrario stretched it out while taking pictures.
Why does it smell like olive oil and garlic?
Clams and clams.
Yeah,
exactly.
Is that a marinara sauce? I didn't even use spaghetti.
Why is there a clam in the bottom of my locker? Yeah, so we were in there for a couple hours, and it was just, absolute blast.
Yeah,
absolute blast.
That's got to be so
to be a part of it. Like I said, every little kid's dream came true that day. But then, like I said, then the real work started, because we had, in college, we talk about on your show where it took us 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to perfect the offense. All of a sudden, now you're handed a 4-inch playbook that's totally different. It's like, we're going to start practice tomorrow. We're installing these plays. The next day, once you get that installed on day 1, now we're installing new plays on day 2. You go through your mini camp. Now the next mini camp, that's when all the vets show up. And it's like, all right, we're rolling. And they know what to do. And you're like sort of following, trying to fit in.
Did you have any vets give you a hard time?
I'd say not really. We joked that Mr. Grabowski called me up because on our last episode, I talked about a fight I got in my rookie year. And she's like, why'd you get in a fight? Like, because she knows me as the nice guy. And I'm like, Mr. Grabowski, I'm a rookie. Like my rookie year in the NFL, I'm like, I don't remember what started it. And the whole premise was in Green Bay, they have the nightly news for a half hour, but then they have a half-hour pack attack segment just talking about practice that day, which blows my mind. And I told guys on other teams, that's unbelievable. Like no other place does it. But that half hour, they broke down my fight like it was HBO Sports. It was like Ferrario throws a right cross, and they go to the Ferrario's got him by the face mask, and Ferrario got a rib shot, and I laugh about it. But Mr. Grabowski's like, what was the fight about? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm sure he pushed me after the whistle, and I just had in my head, everybody stands up for themselves, especially offensive linemen. And I go, I know it's going to happen at some point. And I think I chose that play to be like, all right, I'm going to dig my feet in the ground and show everybody on the team who I am. Right. So he gave me a shove after a whistle, and I think I just was like, all right, time to see red and go to town. And that was probably one of 2 fights I had in 3 years. But it just sort of set the tempo as like, I'm not going to be one to be pushed around, and I'm going to work my heart. I remember I got into it verbally with Gilbert Brown. Gilbert, his last year was my rookie year, and Gilbert yelled at me for holding him in practice. I'm like, Gilbert, listen, I'm not trying to ruin your career, but I go, if I don't block you, I'm going to get cut tomorrow. If I block you well, they're not going to cut you. They might tell you got to work harder, you got to do this, you got to get his hands off. I'm like, to me, holding is when you see jersey pull. I'm like, Gilbert, my hands are inside. I'm moving my feet. Like, I'm doing it exactly the way it's going to happen in the game. I'm like, back off. Like, I'm not stepping down on this. Like, this is what's going to happen. And now, granted, the nice thing was that was after I got in the fight. And I said, it wasn't like I was challenging Gilbert, but I think he knew and everybody else knew, like, if you want to push me, like, we could go there, but I don't want to go there. Like, I want to do what I was brought here to do. And we sort of squashed after that. And he knew, like, I'm not trying to embarrass you in practice, but at the same time, too, I'm not trying to get cut. Right. Like, I'm trying to keep a job.
Right. It's that unique balance, right? You're on the same team, but at the same time, you're trying to beat the next guy to get that job. To get that. So that's such an interesting dynamic.
Well, and so the other thing, and I respected all the defensive guys. Like, I got to go up against Gilbert Brown, Santana Moss, who was another tremendous 3 technique with the Packers. But I can't wait. We're hoping sometime in the future we're going to have Kevin Barry on the show, who is
U71.
U71, yes.
I know that package.
He was my roommate in Green Bay for 2 years whenever we traveled. And Kevin and I both, at that time, we were both playing. I was right guard, he was right tackle. And we went up against KGB. And it was right after Kabir signed that huge contract he signed, I think, in 2002. And we had Doug Peterson at the quarterback. And we have a pass protection, a slide, and we're basically giving him a look. He's on the first team. We're running with the 2s, giving the first team defense a look. And Kabir, as Doug Peterson was about to throw the ball, hits him in the elbow. And that's like the biggest no-no in practice. Do not, whether it's a starter or the third string, you don't touch the quarterback, let alone touch him in throwing arm. So I go up to Kabir and I'm just like, listen, you got to knock that off. Don't do that again. A couple plays later, pass play, he hits Doug even harder in the arm as he's throwing it. And I looked at Doug, we get in the huddle, and we're giving the defense a look. And Doug, it was like a power to the left. And Kevin and I are on the right side of the ball. And I go, Doug, call a pass with a slide to the right. And Doug's like, he can't be changing the play. I'm like, Doug, call a pass and push the slide to the right. And I told Kevin, I go, set to the sidelines. Make him come inside. And Kevin did. He set to the sidelines, and I put my helmet and my fist in his chin, took him down to the ground, and just started beating the shit out of him. And I was like, don't effing touch our quarterback. Like, if Favre goes down, that's the guy that's got to go in. Don't do, I got the – so they just gave him, I think, $30 million. I got the defensive coordinator yelling at me. I got Sherman yelling at me. I got get back in the huddle though. Doug fist bumps. He's like, thanks, man. I'm like, dude, like this is like, what are we idiots here? Like we're all on the same team.
Right.
Like you got away with it once. Then I told you. Then you did it again. I'm like, then we had to teach him a lesson, but he didn't do it after that.
And at that point, he had nothing to prove.
No,
right?
No.
He had that
but at that point, his head was so big, and Kabir's a different cat.
Oh, I've heard, some stories.
He's definitely a different cat. But once he got that money, I remember calling my dad. I never saw anybody. I used to call my dad and say about like how I remember when I was a kid, I had a guy from my high school, Mark Spindler. He was my idol. He went to Pitt and then played for the Detroit Lions. He worked out with Chris Spielman. And when he used to come back to Scranton, he used to tell me as like a 12-year-old, the type of workouts. He was like, I just did arms with Chris, and he had me thrown up in a garbage can just doing arms in the weight room. And I was just always in awe. But I remember when Kabir got his money, I called my dad and I go, Dad, I never seen anybody turn a light switch off as fast as Kabir did. Wow. He got that money. He refused to show up for special teams practice. He was still on, I think, punt return, and kickoff, just didn't show up for practice. During practice, team practice, he wouldn't even go out on first or second down. He's like, I'm getting paid to pass rush. I'll go out on third. And I was like, holy crap. Like, I never saw anything like it before him or after him. But that money, that changed it. Like, he just took that light switch and turned it off.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Man.
And then even people in the NFL, and this is why when he signed that, all of us linemen were like, hey, good for him, but he ain't worth it. Yeah. I mean, he was speed, and that's all he had. Mm-hmm. Once everybody realized he doesn't have an inside move, he doesn't have a bull rush, and he can't stop the run unless he's chasing somebody down from behind. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But they freaking paid him and affected the salary cap for years. And that's another thing with GMs looking at situations like that. Like, we don't want to make a bad decision because that decision financially is going to affect us
how many years down the road. Yep, exactly.
I think the best part of that story is you just demonstrated how you don't mess with the offensive line or quarterback, because
especially a quarterback.
There's ways for us to get you back, and it's great. Yeah. Set to the sideline, and and you even told a story about McIntosh that was sent to the sideline, and you.
Yeah, and that's where I learned it was. I learned not that this is anything bad, but Chris McIntosh, the current AD. I mean, it's not like it's an illegal play, but
it's not dirty. It's football.
Mac essentially taught me back then. Mac was left tackle, I was left guard, so it was a slide to the left. But Mac used to say to me, if he had a sense the guy was willing to spin inside, he'd say to me as we're walking out of the huddle, like, "Hey, I'm going to overset him." And now this is where I have a nose guard to my right. I knew all I got to do is give Casey a hand to my right, and I'm looking to my left. And as soon as that guy spins inside, he's not expecting. But we started figuring out the timing. And like the first year was a little rough. Like I'd be hitting Mac or stepping on Mac's foot or doing this or that. But by year 2 and into year 3, like we would just deplete people. Yeah. Like he'd overset him, and we used to love the slide coming our way, and just be like, "Oh, I hope the TV has a good video of this." Like, I hope they're not focusing on the quarterback and they actually see it. But no, it's fun. But yeah, to Joe's point, it's just I don't know, like offensive lineman. And I tell people this day, I go, I don't think I've ever started a fight in my life, but as an old lineman, I finished a lot of fights.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's like, just don't push us. Even in college, like we had guys in practice that. I'm not going to say a name, but I had a guy in practice my senior year. He was a freshman and hit me after the whistle. So, like, I got him and threw him down to the ground. Mm-hmm. It was just like, all right, tit for tat. So takes his helmet off and throws it at me. And I'm like, oh, now you don't have a helmet on? And I got your helmet in my hand. And I went at him, and I saw red and attacked him. It got broken up. And I went in, and I was friendly with this kid. But I go in the locker room afterwards. I'm like, don't do stupid stuff like that in practice. Like, you're going to get hurt. Like, I'm not trying to be rude to you or whatever, but I'm telling you, don't ever take your helmet off.
Cabin Coffee Altoona, located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane, Altoona, Wisconsin. Stop on by and try our drink of the month, the Brambleberry. Features our white coffee in 3 of our berry flavors. Great tasting, give you that pick-me-up from the caffeine. Cabin Coffee Altoona.
I mean, even Joe and I will test. When we're on the road and that game ends, I remember being defense on the field, winning the game in the O-line and sitting on the bench. As you get up off the bench, you go out to maybe shake hands, whatever, and go through the tunnel. Your helmet's going back on and you're buckling back up, just in case. I mean, we had games where the game would end and you're putting your mouthpiece back in just to go shake hands and walk out the tunnel.
That's funny because there was a game, I think it was the Cowboys or something, but there was a little scuffle, and the cameras caught, and I can't remember who it was, but the announcer's like, well, look at that. It was an offensive lineman. He put his helmet back on.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right before, like 5 seconds before that scuffle started, he put it back on. And so he's like, well, you must have known something was coming. So the fact that you were just saying that, it's like, you clearly put it back on.
You'd even tell younger guys, like, I mean, you just sort of know your environment, whether you won the game or lost. Like, maybe it was a game you lost, like we talked about, we lost at Cincinnati, and we had to walk up the stands to get back to the locker room, and they were coming down. So it's like, buckle up. You know, you look at the young guys, and you're like, buckle up, put your mouthpiece in, like, just in case. Or it's a game you win. I remember being at Penn State. Our freshman year, we lost. And as we went through the tunnel, people were throwing just anything in the stands, they were throwing at us. I mean, we got in the locker room, you're covered with, I mean, beer, which they don't sell in the stadium. Beer, soda, popcorn, hot dogs, ketchup, whatever. You're just covered in it from getting hit. Then you go through the tunnel. And here's a funny story about Penn State freshman year. That game, as we just walked through the tunnel, had 20 people throwing sodas, all this stuff on us. So you feel like a dog, you know what I mean? Getting all this stuff thrown at you. Go in the tunnel, and I'm chin strap buckled up, mouthpiece in. Somebody grabs me by my jersey from behind and spins me. And as I spin, I grab the guy by the throat, and I got a fist ready to throw. And I look at him, and it was a teammate of mine from my 13-year-old state championship baseball team. He wanted to say hi. I'm like, Tommy, I almost put you through this wall. Like, what are you doing? He was like, you couldn't hear me. I guess he was yelling my name, and I was just focused on getting back to the locker room. But I'm like, Tommy, I almost put your head right through this wall. Like, jeepers. But yeah, it's crazy. Now, on the positive side of it, and Joe can attest to this, when we went back as players, seeing Camp Randall today, and I heard Chris McIntosh actually do an interview on this as the AD. He goes, yeah, it's nice. You know, we had to do things for the kids because of the generation. And you see when the Badgers come out the tunnel, it's lights flashing, the video. So what Mac points out, and I'll tell it quick, and I'll let Joe jump in. What Mac pointed out, he goes, listen, we didn't have that in the 90s. He goes, but what we did have, when you walked out, so our locker room was below the McLean Center. We walk up the ramp, I think, and then right when you got to the top of the ramp, you had to cross a blacktop driveway, which was in between Camp Randall and the McLean Center. Once you cross that driveway, you're inside the stadium. Fans would be waiting for us at the top of the ramp. And I remember when we played Penn State in Camp Randall in 98 to make it to the first Rose Bowl. There were so many fans in between the stadium and the McLean, and then in the concourse, we had to walk single file.
Holy wow.
And we're at home, and I remember Mac was up front because he's the captain. I remember Mac looked at me, and he goes, hey, tell everybody else, buckle up, mouthpiece in. These are our own fans. As we walk through this tunnel, single file wide, because there's so many fans, they're punching us on the chin, like, to get you pumped up, like fists on the shoulder pads, slapping you in the head. And I go, it was like a boxer or a UFC guy walking to the cage or the ring. Only fans are allowed to make contact with you. I mean, they're shoving you, they're screaming at you, they're grabbing your face mask, yelling like, kill these guys, whatever. And it went like, that's where I go, your blood was boiling.
Yeah.
When you got on the sidelines, it was like we were ready to go to war. And then I look at, this is sort of like a disco that these guys go through, and I'm like, exactly. Does that really?
Is that a light show? We have a smoke machine for the love of a smoke machine. Come on, really?
Exactly.
I prefer the old school way where you walked up the tunnel as a team and you're going to war.
Yep.
And I use that term lightly, but it's a physical war.
Yeah.
And what pissed me off too, walking through there, I already have a headache for 6 months. Quit beating on my head.
Exactly.
I'm going to go do that. Like, quit hit me in the head for the love of God. I don't have any brain cells left. Like,
I just wish.
Cabin Coffee Altoona, located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane, Altoona, Wisconsin. Stop on by and try our drink of the month, the Brambleberry. Features our white coffee in 3 of our berry flavors. Great tasting, give you that pick-me-up from the caffeine. Cabin Coffee Altoona.
It's like there's not, like Joe and I joke about memory. There's not a ton of stuff that we could remember from start to finish. Both of us, we help each other out. If you bring in like Dave Kasper or Casey here, we remember a ton of stories. But I could picture in my head that walk, that Penn State game. I wish there was a GoPro for because just saying it sounds intense, but until you're there and it's like you just did warm-ups, you're back in the locker room, coach gives a speech, you're ready to go. When you walk up and you're walking probably 4 wide. And you're like, holy shit, there's so many fans, like, we got to go single file. Because the fans aren't backing up.
Right.
They're like, we're here to motivate you. They left their seats to come down to the concourse because they know the path we take to the field. I mean, it was just intense doesn't describe it enough.
And I don't think you can replicate that feeling.
No.
I mean, and even in our age, like, adrenaline's a drug. I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
It's a freaking drug. And we're still – I can't chase that drug anymore. Hey, we had a good day at sales today. Like, and I made a wicked frappe. Like, you should have seen the caramel and chocolate drizzle I put on there. It was like,
and a light show in smoke doesn't replicate.
No, it does not. It does not.
I don't care what generation you are. I don't care what you think.
No, it doesn't.
I
still miss. I like to this day. Like I miss being on a team.
Yeah.
That like I'm like I'll do anything almost to like. Can we create some sort of team so I can get like a jacket with a logo or something on there?
And I joke with people this day, like people are always like, what do you miss about football? And my first response is joking. I go, I miss payday. But the second one's the serious one. I go, I miss the locker room. I don't miss the games. I don't miss practice one bit. But the locker room, just that locker room, it's like that camaraderie, that teammates, your brothers, your family. You know, you're doing something as a collective. You all hurt together at the same time. You all celebrate together at the same time. You're all sad at the same time. It's that locker room, that camaraderie. I mean, that, and we talked last episode with Dave Sparger about, you know, like how sports translates to life, and everything you learn in sports helps you be better at life, helps you be more determined, helps you set goals better, helps with every single aspect of life. So
I 100%, like I didn't have a dad, you know, and all, so I learned all that from watching guys on TV or the coaches I had in school and that was kind of like sports was my outlet to go out there, whether it was picking up a basketball and pretending the sidewalk block was my hoop because we didn't have a basketball hoop, but it was just like, hey, now I can, this is where I'm going to beat Michael Jordan or you know, in the backyard and doing pass patterns by myself, you know, that sort of stuff. I don't know where I'd be without, you know, playing sports like that. So
I even go as far as this coffee shop, this endeavor is something that was so far out of my realm that I didn't have a clue, and you rely on people. But what I did think I knew is I don't know how to fail. I'll work myself to death. I will claw with my fingernails and kick and scream and fight for every inch I had. You don't learn that in just life. Like, I was taught that whether it was good in football or bad in football, I incorporated every one of those positive things, how to lead people, how not to lead people. Everything was incorporated into this business I brought from football. And that's what a huge impact it had in my life. And my career was cut short, you know, with knee surgeries, and I didn't reach my full potential based because of that. But I took a lot more away from football than football took away from me, and that includes the concussions. And,
That's another shirt that you guys got to get.
And the 46-year-old that has memory problems, and I can't walk real well. Like I have a stupid gait, and like I'm falling apart. All that was worth what I took from that sport. Honestly,
I think that's huge. We get asked a lot, would you do it over again? No. I mean, both of us, we're in pain nonstop every day. You know, everything Joe just said, we're both going through, but yeah, you wouldn't give up what you got out of it.
And I would do it yesterday.
Exactly.
Same result.
And not even saying yes, we had a lot of success and we were on some special teams in college, but even take the success away, take away the wins. It's the experience. It's what we learned. It's, you know, like I think we're better dads for it. I think we're better husbands for it. I think we're better at our jobs, or we're better coaching others because of it. The positives outweigh the negatives.
Absolutely.
It's like we don't want people, like even they ask about our kids, like, would you allow, I got asked a million times, would you allow your son to play football? And he does. He's in his, I think, third year, going to be going into his fourth year with pads. And I go, yes, absolutely. Like, I don't want him to miss out on those opportunities. Now, the difference is we understand concussions today. We understand, you know, the right way and the wrong way to make a tackle and stuff. So I want him to know what we didn't know back then. But at the same time, too, yeah, go out there and do it. Go out there and learn that struggle. Learn how to deal with adversity. Learn how to set a goal and attain a goal. Learn the amount of work you have to put in to get something you want. Things aren't handed to you in life. I think all those lessons are huge.
It relates to your career now. I mean, like that's, you know, for the radio show, like we didn't have one. The way I did it, I asked to have a sit down with my GM and sales manager, and I made a presentation. I went in there like it was game day. Like, hey, we need this. Scared, you know what?
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
but it's like I was getting pumped up like it was a game and all that. And it worked, you know, but it was that. I don't know if I would have been able to do that because, you know, if it wasn't for my, you know, experience or not to your guys' level, but, you know, just that adversity, what you were saying, you know, and reaching your goals and that sort of stuff. So,
and I think the one thing too is just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and people don't like it was the ability to still function when you're uncomfortable and get comfortable in that space. And I think that's super huge. And I think that's being lost now. Like, sometimes it sucks.
Jordan,
sometimes it hurts.
I don't know if you heard Jordan Love's quote, pressure is a privilege.
Oh, no. I like it.
No, that's nice.
Very true.
Yeah.
It is. Absolutely.
Well, you think back to, you know, like our first day showing up, being dropped off at seminary, at camp. I mean, how uncomfortable you are. Like, I remember when I went in to different teams for workouts, or, you know, you join a new team, you don't know where's the locker room, or the left. I mean, I remember asking parking attendants in the NFL, like, how do I get in the building?
Right.
I don't know. But it's just like, you have to. Here's a side story I'm going to say, and I'm not going to describe who it is because I'm friends with the person. But somebody I knew after high school went to college, and they gave him, he was probably like a XX, they gave him 4XL pants. And he was just uncomfortable. He ended up quitting 2 days later. Not saying he would have, it wasn't a big school, wasn't D1, it was like D3, whatever. But just, it's uncomfortable. Like, you have to figure stuff out. You know, like, it's uncomfortable when you're the third string guy, or you're like when I went to Carolina, I was that year, I think they set the record in the NFL for most guys put on IR. I was the 17th guy they signed during the season, but they had that many guys injured, and it was just like a rotating locker. And you get in there, and it's like you got to learn the offense. You got to learn, hey, how are you doing? What's your name? What position do you play? Like, I have no clue who you are. How do I get to the practice field?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you gotta be comfortable doing it. And like, half of it's confidence, half of it's, you know, your past experiences. But
I agree.
Exactly.
Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up here.
It was great having you, Dan.
Absolutely.
It's kind of cool.
It was fun.
Usually we're over at your place, but now you get to come over to our yard.
A little bit more elbow room in here. You know,
not as hot.
Not as hot. We got the fan
the air on. AC cranked way down.
Hey, I saw today, there were some people there for like HVAC and all that. So maybe,
nice.
Maybe we're going to get some air finally in there. But no, this is fun. Like, I love chatting with you guys, and it's actually fun I was telling Bill when we were out there, I don't have to set it up this time. So.
I'm going to ask you to pull down. Help take that. That was part of the deal.
I got an email. Our staff meeting. They're waiting for me right now. So
we only got 20 chairs. We got to put back.
Absolutely. But yeah, so just thanks again to Cabin Coffee Altoona and to Pizza Del Rey. Mm-hmm. Cabin Coffee is located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane in Altoona, Wisconsin. And Dan, I'll let you sign off with yours.
Well, we appreciate it. It's the Man Cave Podcast, and a big thanks. It's not possible without 217 South Mills and these two guys over here too. So
awesome. Well, thank you guys all very much. Stay tuned next week for another episode.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Joe and I today. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. If you like what you heard, please give 217 South Mills a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Go tell your friends about us. Like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube.
I'd like to thank Cabin Coffee Altoona for sponsoring us. Everything is always better at the cabin. See you next time. And remember, folks, Red has to run.